Welcome to the Rewilded Human podcast, where Dr. Lucille, holistic psychiatrist and psychotherapist, and Dr. Lynn, naturopath and nutritional consultant, help you reconnect with your true self through practical tips on mental health, nutrition, exercise, relationships, and spirituality. With a dash of humor, they tackle today's toughest issues to guide you back to a harmonious, vibrant life. Rediscover your natural self, just as nature intended. In today's episode,
the first classic sign, in my opinion, in my experience, is a constant need for admiration. And I'm sure you guys all know someone like this. They always seek praise and attention and get upset when they don't receive it. Like they will do anything to provoke this attention, that they need this from everyone and they need to be admired. You know, they need to be looked up to. They're like gods. So you think of politicians, actors, musicians, you know, basically anybody in the spotlight.
We kind of get confused and think, oh, they're the great visionaries, the idealists, the gurus, the this, the that. We look up to them and idealize them, but we don't realize that they are feeding off of the admiration that we give them.
They'll be horrible to you, but amazing to your brother, to your kids, to your mother.
Absolutely.
And they turn them into these flying monkeys that are all advocating for you and saying, are you crazy? You've got the best, most amazing guy in the world. Look how nice he treats us. And you start thinking like, you're crazy. Something's wrong with me because he's normal. Everybody loves him. But you see this other side, this much, much darker side of him.
Welcome, everybody, to episode number 57 of the Rewilded Human podcast. And today, I and my beautiful brains behind the scene partner, Lynn Hardy, are going to be discussing how you can tell if you're involved with a narcissist. I'm Dr. Lucille. I'm a holistic and spiritually oriented psychiatrist, psychotherapist. And Lynn, my co-partner here, is a clinical nutritionist and naturopath. And between the two of us, we've had so much life experience as well as our professional credentials that we just thought we would help people navigate life a little bit better.
Absolutely. And we're changing our format a little bit. I just wanted to mention this to you guys, because up to this point, we were doing interviews, we were doing chats with Dr. Lucille, and we were also answering your questions. So we dedicated like every month, at least 2 or 3 episodes to answering your questions. And we're going to change that format a little bit. Although we enjoyed doing that, and we really loved getting the questions from you guys, we're going to try to change the focus a little bit, be more true to our name, the Rewilded Human podcast. So we're going to try to address different issues that we think are very important to bring to the table. And, you know, we're going to see how it evolves. Our podcast is now 1 year old. So we're going to make some changes. And, you know, you guys, yeah, it's exciting. You guys let us know what you think of this new format and the new way that we're doing things. If you like it better or less, hopefully you like it more. Yeah, so we put together basically 5 things to look out for when it comes to spotting, right? The narcissist.
And, I think we should really be transparent about the fact that both you and I have had quite a lot of personal experience with narcissists.
Too much.
Wait. But eventually, I don't know about you, but I learned. Eventually, I learned to steer clear.
The ones you can steer clear of, you know, that, yes. But then sometimes, yeah.
Right.
Sometimes it's difficult, but yes, absolutely. But, you know, this will be a warning to you guys because you might be involved, especially when we're talking about covert narcissists, right? Mm-hmm. We'll also cover that in this episode. And covert narcissists are very, very interesting because you can be married to one for 20, 30 years and not even know it.
So, so let's start on our journey. Shall we start with some people call it the toxic narcissists. This is a classic narcissistic category that I think most people are aware of. Yeah, so Lynn, you have compiled your 5 tips of things to look for to detect a narcissist. Do you want to start perhaps going through the list? I also have the DSM,
the official version.
The official version, the DSM-5, which is the Bible of psychiatric psychological diagnoses. And we'll see how they match up and what they tell us. How's that?
How they compare. Yeah, that sounds good. So I'll start with the first one. The first classic sign in my opinion, in my experience, is a constant need for admiration. And I'm sure you guys all know someone like this. They always seek praise and attention and get upset when they don't receive it. Like they will do anything to provoke this attention, that they need this from everyone and they need to be admired. You know, they need to be looked up to. They're like gods. So you think of politicians, actors, musicians, you know, basically anybody in the spotlight except us, right? We're not narcissists.
Humble human being.
Humble narcissist notch. I'm only kidding. So what do you think, Lucille? Is that a good one to start with?
Oh, yeah, it certainly is. And it's certainly one that appears on the DSM-5 list of criteria. And I think one of the things that is probably important to understand is because these people already, a lot of them get a lot of admiration depending on what area of life they're in, what industry they're in. We kind of get confused and think, oh, they're the great visionaries, the idealists, the gurus, the this, the that. And we look up to them and idealize them, but we don't realize that they are feeding off of the admiration that we give them, and that they are surrounded, usually when they get to the especially upper echelons, they're surrounded by yes people who are there to insulate them from the reality that they are not the latest, greatest, biggest, best. You know, they're surrounded by people who will cushion their egos.
Yeah.
So no matter what the general public starts to come to think of them, you know, whatever the negative spin starts happening after people start seeing that the narcissist is not that great, wonderful God that we thought he or she was, the yes people are all there to cushion that, to prevent the narcissist from really knowing the truth.
What's happening? Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
So and people, and the other thing that people may have heard of is narcissistic supply, which is all about getting constant feeding of the ego from other people. So that's part of the whole process of getting the admiration they need. It's called narcissistic supply. They're literally feeding off of other people's opinions of them.
Is this similar to, like, I also heard the term flying monkeys, that narcissists will have like these flying monkeys around them who basically confirm how amazing, how good they are. For example, in a relationship, you could be in a relationship with a narcissist, and what they'll do is they'll be horrible to you, but amazing to your brother, to your kids, to your mother.
Absolutely.
And they turn them into these flying monkeys that are all advocating for you and saying, are you crazy? You've got the best, most amazing guy in the world. Look how nice he treats us. And you start thinking like, you're crazy. Something's wrong with me because he's normal. Everybody loves him. But you see this other side, this much, much darker side of him. Correct?
Exactly. And it's a funny thing. Thanks for pointing this out. But it's a form of narcissism seen in a different way, because all the admirers, the flying monkeys, are in their own form of narcissism, because they think the way I see this person is the only way to see this person, right?
Yeah.
If I think this person is wonderful, then what's wrong with my friend, sister, brother, whatever, who doesn't see them in the same light? You know, we all have our narcissism, in other words. And so we always have to be clear that we don't know what the person who's involved with the narcissist is going through. Appearances can be deceiving.
Yeah. And it's usually behind closed doors, because they are very, very different behind closed doors. I mean, I've lived this, so I know firsthand that it's a completely different face that they show to you, especially when they're not happy with you, when you're not fulfilling all their wishes and admiring them for the gods that they are. Cult leaders can probably fall into this category. Right?
Absolutely.
That's a good profession for someone with narcissistic tendencies.
Right. Top 10 professions for narcissists. Yes, it's one of them right up there.
5 occupations. So the second one that I put down, Lucille, is from, again, based on just my experience, is lack of empathy. They struggle to understand or care about other people's feelings, focusing only on their own needs. And this might be kind of hidden because sometimes they will pretend like, oh, I'm so sorry, I feel so bad, but there's nothing behind it. You know, it's like a show.
Yeah, and I would say they're not struggling with empathy. It's off their radar. So you're right. What they do is they mimic what they see in other people that's empathy, and they'll try to put that on. So they're always studying other people to figure out how they can, quote unquote, fit in to a certain extent, be accepted. They just don't have empathy. And it's often been suggested in the theoretical communities in psychiatry and psychology that they have what's called lacunae or lakes or gaps in their brain functioning. They literally have not been able to develop the trait of empathy. It's gone for some reason. But that is also one that the DSM-5 does cite as a very important clue.
So 2 out of 2.
2 out of 2, yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Lucille, do you think when you said that they're mimicking these expressions that they're seeing on other people's faces, is this a conscious thing? Like, are they doing this consciously or subconsciously? Is this...
They're not very self-reflective. They don't really, most of them do not really have an insight into what they're doing. I suspect it's much more of an unconscious thing that they're doing, rather than, a conscious intent to deceive. Although some of them are, and when you get towards the scale, along the scale towards sociopaths, that's where you can see that they are consciously trying to manipulate and deceive. And so
is there a fine line between the two?
There can be a fine line. Narcissists can cross over, especially, you see, if they are crossed and they are highly offended that they're not given the approval and admiration that they want, or they feel that something has been taken away from them, because another characteristic is envy. They envy others who they perceive as having something they don't, but they also perceive others as envious of them. And so people can be a threat, easily become a threat, and then you can cross over into revenge acts. Acts of revenge. They can become vengeful, which sometimes means they get in trouble with the law. Now, are they the ones who necessarily are like openly sociopathic, where they are plotting day and night to find their next murder victim? Usually not. Doesn't usually cross into that. But yes, narcissistic personality disorder can at least get in on the wrong side of the law.
Interesting. Very. Do you see a lot of narcissists in your practice?
Oh, no, they don't come to therapists. They don't come for help.
I knew you were going to say that.
They don't need help. Everybody else around them needs help.
You see the spouses.
Yes, because people are just not empathic enough to their needs, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you had that experience too with your partner, and I had two narcissists in my past that I married. And did you find that as well? That it does. They never own up.
No, they've never done anything wrong in their whole lives. Everything they do is perfect, and something's wrong with you, obviously. Like,
absolutely,
the fault lies in you.
Right. If they go to therapy, here's what happens, and I have seen this on occasion in marital work. They will come for something like marital work to try and manipulate the therapist to see the situation from their point of view and fix their partner.
Wow.
Okay.
And do they succeed? I've heard that with covert narcissists, this can happen, that they can actually fool the therapist or the psychiatrist and get them on their side.
That's right. Exactly. And of course, that drives the partner crazy, because they really then start believing that, that they are the ones who are totally defective in all of this. And yet They do. Nothing they do can improve the situation. As we were talking about earlier before we started filming, the people that most therapists see are the victims, if you want to call them victims.
Yeah, victims, definitely.
The people who are involved with the narcissists, right? They're married to them, friends, co-workers. That's another area that's big, is the stress in work, because these narcissists will be the ones who rise to the top, managerial and upper level administrative positions, and they make life miserable for everybody working under them. Yeah,
I can imagine. Lucille, like with Asperger's, for example, there's this term that they use for the people that are married to a man with Asperger's, not to go off topic, but just they're called Cassandras. They call the women Cassandras because they develop this different type of personality. Is there something like this also with narcissists? So like the spouse of the narcissist, is there some kind of a term or something, some kind of a disorder that the wife, for example, would develop being married to the narcissist?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, there's certainly lots of descriptions now about the partners of narcissists who go, let's be very psychiatric in our terminology here, they go screwy. They go completely screwy, right?
Yeah.
And they're seen as the neurotic ones, the ones with the personality disorder. They are screaming for help sometimes. Sometimes they just withdraw completely into a shell, and most people are over focused on them, thinking there is something wrong. And the narcissistic partner will only fuel that idea. They will make it very clear that poor Linda, she's just having a really hard time, and so the spouse, unless they have external validation, they can go completely crazy with all of this.
Yeah, I can totally see that, especially over years and decades. If you don't smarten up, absolutely. Lucille, now also I hear this term narcissist thrown around a lot. It's like, oh, he's a psychopath, he's a narcissist. People just throw this term around quite a bit. Oftentimes it's just kind of, it doesn't really have any kind of meaning behind it, right? Because you really need to have a clinical diagnosis. I mean, you can't just go on what we're saying, that but I mean, if these 5 things that we're going through now, if you are experiencing that, then there is a chance, right? Whereas, perhaps you have, someone's just not acting the way you want them to act. You can't just right away label them with some kind of psychiatric disorder.
And that's really unfortunate, because it really diminishes the real problem here. It really minimizes, distorts the whole thing. Just because somebody seems to be acting in a self-centered way, that does not make them a narcissist. Everybody can do that at some point. You have to be very, very clear, because then you're also undervaluing the true suffering that people involved with the narcissist are going through. And you can easily dismiss that. And these people do not need to be dismissed. If anything, they need a lot of support and a lot of help to break free. And so I highly object to the use of these terms in a superficial, trivial way. It does nobody any good. It misrepresents and causes so much misunderstanding. It helps nobody.
No, I agree completely. Well, let's look at number 3, see if this one's a match as well. And this is my favorite one. I mean, least favorite. By favorite, I mean least favorite. Gaslighting. So they manipulate situations to make you question your own reality or feel guilty, often shifting blame onto you. And I mean, anybody who has lived this or is living this or knows people who gaslight you constantly, anything you say, no, that didn't happen. Or this was like this in my child. No, it wasn't like that. No, the sky's not blue, it's green. What do you think?
In the DSM-5, there is nothing about gaslighting in the criteria, but I think put it under the category of exploitative. That's one of the characteristics that DSM-5 does list. And in order to exploit people, they do use tactics like gaslighting to keep people under control, to keep people, giving them their narcissistic supply. They do a variety of maneuvers like gaslighting. So I think the two of those sort of fit between the two lists. And one of the things that is really important, if you're believing that you've been gaslit, if you believe that you're being manipulated, I would take that really seriously. I wouldn't just dismiss it as, well, nobody else sees it, so I guess I must be wrong. No, you have to be very, very respectful of your emotions and how you feel. The interesting thing about diagnoses like narcissism is that, unlike other diagnoses like schizophrenia, for example, somebody exhibits schizophrenia who's not on their medications or, is flagrantly in an episode, whatever, you can tell right off the bat there's something amiss with this person. They're suffering. There's something wrong here. Right. The narcissists and psychopaths sort of along that line of that spectrum. Yeah. Funny, because you will get the diagnosis, I think, far more by how they make you feel, not always necessarily how they behave. You're not always going to get that unless you see them for a long time and see patterns emerging. Because, as you say, it can be a bit deceptive, because to everybody else, they're perfectly charming. They're perfectly, they look empathic. They look very sociable, but the person who's in intimate contact with them will start to feel a certain way. And that's usually, for me, the telltale sign of being with a narcissist. So if you're realizing I'm being gaslit, I'm being manipulated to see myself as the problem all the time, then that's a telltale sign of a narcissist.
Interesting. Okay? Yeah. I think this is a good time to maybe cover briefly what a covert narcissist or a vulnerable narcissist would be. Right. Someone, because that's a little bit more difficult to recognize.
It's more difficult because the traditional narcissist, the one that is often referred to as toxic narcissist, they're the ones who are, any room they enter into, they have to command the attention. Yeah. They're performing already the moment they walk through the door, and they will tell you all these grandiose stories about themselves, how they were, hunting rhinos with Idi Amin and they're advising President Trump on all of his, health measures, blah, 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 blah. You can see them coming. They're like a tidal wave almost, right? You can see it, right? Yeah. The covert ones are the ones that are, as you said, Lynn, they're a little more complicated and challenging, because they are kind of like the introverted version, introverted version of the toxic narcissist. So they'll be the ones who are running around getting people drinks at the party. They will compliment people on how they're dressed, or, what the topic is that they've brought up, or, and they will ingratiate themselves with people, so that, again, everybody has this idea that, oh, he or she is just almost too good to be true. They're just so wonderful, right? Yeah. So they appear on the surface and can look for a very long time as if they are not indeed a toxic narcissist. They're, in fact, that ideal love of your life that you've just been blessed with.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so that can exact a pretty big toll, because you can go for a longer period of time feeling an undercurrent of, there's something wrong here, but I can't really put my finger on it. And when I look around me, everybody loves this guy or loves this gal. Oh my God.
And I've never been loved so much by anyone. Like, this person loves me more than anyone ever.
I think the term love bombing is very appropriate to the situation, where, you've just met for a coffee date, and, this guy is texting you 5 times a day. He's sending flowers to your door. He shows up at your door claiming that he just can't be without you, even though he knows that you're spending the evening feverishly preparing a presentation for work the next day.
Yeah.
He just arrives with the champagne and the flowers, and I just couldn't be alone without you, darling, even just for one night, right?
Yeah.
People can be seduced by this. A lot of people are.
Oh yeah, for sure.
For sure, especially if they have no experience of people like this, right?
Yeah.
So, you start then the person who's being love bombed, they start rearranging. It's interesting how they just automatically start rearranging their lives so that the priority is the narcissistic partner and what they want and what they need. And this classically happens between a male narcissist and a female non-narcissist, because the male narcissist is feeding off of the natural tendency of a woman to nurture and be caring and empathic and sad to say, sacrifice herself to take care of others, right? And this can be going on for a very, very, very long time before the woman or partner wakes up to the fact that I feel so small and diminished in this relationship. I feel horrible about myself. I'm kind of getting the feeling that maybe there is something wrong in this partnership, and it's not all about me. It's when they start waking up that things that they start having a chance to work on themselves and heal and eventually get out of the relationship. But it takes a long time.
Especially to recognize it, because it is so hidden.
Oh yeah, it is. It is.
Absolutely. I have friends in these types of relationships, and it breaks my heart, and they don't see it. And then they'll make comments to me like, well, I feel like I live in a cage, but it's a golden cage, but they feel it. I mean, they're restricted in what they can do, what they can say. They're walking on eggshells all the time. And somehow they believe this is normal.
Right. Or this is somehow true love, or they
True
create
love,
stories.
Or what do I do at my age? Nobody will ever love me like he loves me. And, he takes such good care of me and everything. But then the stuff that goes on behind closed doors is a whole different story. So it's very, very sinister. And, these guys, they smile to your face and they're charming and everything. And then you know what's happening. Like, and even at the party, for example, at a party, they'll be mad at you, or they'll be nice to you, to the wife, for example. But then as soon as you go home, why did you look at that guy that way? I saw you doing that. But in front of everybody, they put on this facade like everything's fine. And then as soon as the doors are closed, it's like, okay, let's move on to the next one. Number 4, grandiosity. They have an exaggerated sense of self-importance and believe they are superior to others. So we did basically cover this, that, this is the opposite of the covert narcissist, is like the grandiose or toxic narcissist, as you called it, right, Lucille? So this...
Right. This is also number 1 on the DSM-5 list.
Oh, it's number 1. Oh, wow. Okay. So is it ranked according to like importance or prevalence?
Yeah, to a certain extent it is, yes.
So that's like a big sign to look out for then.
It's a big sign. Yes, it is. Yeah. And I think the one thing that is also important about this is, again, the distinction that the grandiosity is like, you can see the tidal wave coming. You won't necessarily get that with the covert narcissist. If anything, they distinguish themselves by, they can often be self-deprecating. They can make jokes about themselves, but it's all in a way of gaining approval or making people feel safe around them, etc. The grandiose sense of self-importance, if you've ever been around people like this, and I wouldn't be around people even if I was paid to be around people like this, but it can be so draining. I don't know if you've noticed this, Lynn.
Absolutely.
It's like they are performing at 100% all the time, and it's all about them.
They have to be the center of attention in every situation. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, I think we've pretty much covered that one. The two, toxic and covert, are similar in that they're self-centered. They're constantly self-centered, but how they express that is different.
Yeah. Would this be like a major difference? For example, a toxic narcissist or an overt narcissist that they would, they make themselves larger than life. They tell these amazing stories and everything. Whereas the covert narcissist will put themselves down in order for you to lift them up. Would this be like
Yes,
a major
exactly.
difference to spot the two?
Exactly. It's a manipulation to get
Yeah.
people to give them attention and basically constantly be at their beck and call to take care of them, to take care of their feelings.
Yeah.
So
Nurture them. Yeah,
this
absolutely.
is the kind of a guy who, wife goes in for a complicated labor and delivery of their baby, and he's the one on the phone crying to everybody how hard this whole thing is on him.
I haven't slept all night. Oh my God.
Haven't
You can't imagine how tired I am.
Oh, yes, yes. So, yeah.
Yeah, I totally understand. Okay, let's look at number 5. Control and manipulation. They use tactics to control situations and people, making sure things always go their way.
Right. And the gaslighting is part of that. That's a manipulation to control, right?
Yes.
And there are some other things. You did a really great YouTube video on narcissism, which I would highly recommend people look at if you want a really good description. And in it, you mentioned this piece about how they start undermining the people around you, the people that are important to you.
Yes.
And they're basically creating a wedge between you and your other nearest and dearest.
Yeah, they don't want you to have friends. They don't want you to have family. They'll keep you away from your children, your brothers, sisters, your best friends, because they need to be the only person in your life.
That's right.
Yes.
They have total control over their narcissistic supply. And so I remember that so vividly with my last ex, and his criticism wouldn't be like blatant all the time, but he'd always find some little dig, always find some little thing that I hadn't even thought of about, oh, your best friend, you notice how she's so superficial, and things like that just after a while I began to think, I realized this felt like poison, inserted in my own body, right?
But did it influence you, Lucille? Did it influence you when he would make these comments?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Before I understood what the dynamic was, I got taken in, right? I got taken in. But then I also was aghast after a while to see him operate in this way with other people, because one of the other manipulations is to bait people into arguments, which also makes them the center of attention, brings tremendous attention to them. Doesn't matter if it's positive. In the covert narcissist realm, it doesn't necessarily matter that it's positive or negative. They're craving the attention. So we were involved in a spiritual group where he started playing out this tactic with the facilitator, the main teacher. And I was mortified. He was trying to bait her into having an argument, and she cut him off, which was great. But that was one of the things that, one of the clues that I got, that, oh yeah, okay, it's not just me. It's a tactic on his part to get attention. And that was sort of the beginning of the end for us when I started waking up. But there are so many manipulative behaviors. So gaslighting would be one of them. Baiting people into arguments would be another. Undermining your support system so that you become isolated and dependent on the narcissist. Lying, deceiving, cheating. Cheating is another one. That's a really important one. I'm just going to say this just quickly. I don't want to take up too much time with this, but I have had a number of clients where the guy was cheating on them. Either it was porn addiction, or going to prostitutes, or trying to seduce the friends of the spouse. All of this really ugly stuff, and they're caught. And what happens then is the partner is infuriated, but the unfortunate thing is they're still dependent on them. And so what happens is the partner starts telling them, okay, you can't do this anymore. You have to do it this way. You have to show me all your text messages and your email messages and all of this. And they get on their high horse and really self-righteously indignant and enraged, as understandably.
Yeah.
But then they start uttering the edicts. They start commanding the narcissistic partner to behave better. And what does the narcissistic partner do? They comply. It's easy for them. They just put on another mask, because they don't want to leave their narcissistic supply. They don't want to. It's a cushy, existence to be taken care of by a woman. And if the woman's not ready to just, throw them out the door, then they get into this bizarre dynamic where the woman is, she's like the drill sergeant telling the guy what he's got to do to prove that you really love me, which is totally bizarre. The guy's never really loved anybody in his life. But anyway, and then the guy just complies. And sometimes the woman will take false assurance from that he's really changing. No, compliance is not true change. It's just compliance. That's it.
Exactly.
And once things go back to normal, everybody breathes a sigh of relief. The narcissist can go about doing his little covert, missions, doing whatever he wants to do.
Of course.
And you're into another cycle. It's just rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat.
Yeah. I definitely know people like this, and it's very sad. Lucille, do you think if a narcissist is watching this video, do you think that he would recognize himself or herself as having this problem? No.
Sometimes it depends. For the most part, I don't think anyone would even want to watch this. Any real narcissist to want to watch this beyond the first minute or two when they figure out what it's about.
Yeah.
However, there are some narcissists who aren't so bad, and they would, they might start sort of recognizing themselves, but don't hold your breath that that's going to make them change.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot. And the one unfortunate fact about these people, if you want to be empathic to them, is that the older they get, the more likely it is that they're going to fall into a deep depression. Why?
Really?
Because they've burnt all their bridges, and there's no narcissistic supply anymore. All of their admirers have fled.
Wow.
And so they are truly empty. They can't rely on anybody to fill them up.
Wow.
And so, so that's another mental health risk down the road. And so I would like to warn any woman who's of an older age who meets a guy who's it looks like he's been chronically depressed, and he just tells you all these sob stories about how people have done him wrong.
Yeah.
Run for the hills. I don't care how much your heart is pulled to take care of him. Run for the hills.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's great advice, Lucille. We're gonna have to wrap this episode up, but I think this is like a really interesting topic that we need to revisit. And perhaps in the next one, we can maybe give some coping solutions.
Right. And I would just say, anybody out there who you would love to comment or ask questions, please feel free to leave them either on social media in our DMs or here in the comments section, because it is a very, very meaty topic, and unfortunately way too many people get caught in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, for the time being, all we can say to you guys, if you do recognize all or some of these symptoms, do get help, at least for yourself, because I think it's really important. It's a really hard battle to fight on your own. As far as, we've both been there, Lucille, where you're hoping this person's going to change.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a very, very slight chance of them. Or do they change? Is there even hope for them to change?
Yeah, no, there's nothing that really works reliably for any of them. Even if they come to therapy, it's like virtually impossible.
And there's no medication or something they can take? Nothing. So then it's a very hard decision. If you recognize that you're in this situation, and there, basically all you can do is work on yourself and decide whether this is the kind of life that you are willing to live for the rest of your life.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what about with like family members? If it's a family member, not someone that you can actually get away from, anything, any kind of coping?
Well, yes, there are things that you can do, and we may leave this for the next episode, but there's something called gray rocking or yellow rocking.
Oh, I haven't heard of that.
These are very key strategies. Once you've woken up, once you are clear that you no longer want to be used and manipulated, then these are two behaviors that you can use with the narcissist. So that's something we may want to focus on in the next episode.
Definitely. Let's do that in the next episode, because I think that would be really, really interesting. Okay, guys, that brings us to the end of episode 57. We went a little bit over than we were hoping to, but I mean, such an interesting topic. I could talk about this forever, right, Lucy? I'm sure you could as well. Yes. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please share this video with someone that you think it could help. Make sure you subscribe. The algorithm loves any kind of any kind of love and attention that you give to this. Give us a review. That always helps. And we'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning into the Rewilded Human podcast. We hope you're leaving with insights to reconnect with your natural, vibrant self. Remember, the information shared here is for educational and inspirational purposes only, and is not a substitute for medical advice. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider for any personal health concerns. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who might benefit. We'll see you next time, ready to dive even deeper. Stay wild, stay true, and stay tuned.